So it's all about in the Mennonite culture, when there's a wedding and there's 200 to 300 guests, the bride and her mother and her, sisters or whatever, they prepare all the food. And I promise you, they are not preparing it the day before the wedding, right? Because here's the other thing, the weddings happen in the bride's home. So they are like cleaning out furniture, setting up chairs. So the food, you learn from an early age what you can make ahead of time, what has to go in the freezer, what can go in the refrigerator and still taste just as good. And I think a lot of times what people think is that stuff that's in the freezer has been put there because it was stale or it was on its way out. So we better hurry up, freeze it. But they don't understand your things that you're buying at the grocery store, they are from the freezer. The trick is you have to put them in the freezer when they're fresh. You got to
Mhm.
trap that freshness and nobody would ever know.
Yeah, and I have to say frozen cakes frost so much easier than,
And
like,
there's something
fresh.
about freezing baked goods that keeps them moist. I don't even know, but they're like when I first started talking on social media about preparing ahead of time and freezing, like the Mennonites have this good mashed potato recipe that freezes for months. And people like I got so much hate because they're like, well, never eat. You know how it was. It was something that went viral. And then you have people that don't understand the context, don't
Yeah.
understand my heart. And they're like, well, never eat at Ruth Ann's house. Nothing's fresh there. And I'm like, oh, people just simply don't understand how to use the freezer, right? And these are probably the same people that are eating freezer pizzas.
Yeah. I
So but in the Mennonite cookbooks, in the back section, you'll often find cooking for a crowd
Yeah.
where they've scaled up the recipes. And like I have one recipe that is from my sister, from my mom, and it'll make cheese potatoes you can make them, like a roaster full that serves 100 people. And it says you need this many pounds of shredded hash browns, this many boxes of cheese, butter, and they just scale the recipes up.
Okay. Do you have, like, a formula or any, like, specific strategies for scaling up recipes for a large group like that?
Um, Not
Or, like, any,
really.
like, these types of recipes work well for scaling? Maybe that would be a better way of
Yes.
saying it.
So I think most of the time when you're scaling up, like to feed a large crowd, you're either going to want soups or your ingredients separately. So cheese potatoes and a roaster full of baked beans and burgers or something like that. But rarely when you're feeding like over 100 people is a casserole a good idea because there's just no way, you're either gonna bake 10 9 by 13s
Right.
or because my go-to for feeding a large crowd of people is the big roasters, like the big turkey roasters.
Yeah.
And you don't want to mix multiple ingredients in those unless it's soup. Because even if you're doing lasagna, right? Let's say lasagna, which I love to make lasagna. But really, by the time you layer it all in a roaster, the edges are going to be burned before the center is done. You need something that you can stir. And you don't want to stir lasagna.
Those are really good tips. And this is so funny because my oldest son just turned 20, and I have a feeling within the next year or two, there will be a wedding. And so I'm already kind of planning ahead for large and, like, to help a young couple keep costs down. I mean, obviously there's catering, but, like, goodness, that gets so expensive. And so I'm already thinking ahead a little bit or a lot of, like,
Yes.
okay, like, for the wedding, like, what are some things that I can help them do to help, mitigate costs, to keep costs down and still be a lovely experience for
You
all
can
involved.
save if you can make so for my daughter's weddings got the meat catered because here was the thing, my husband really loves his smoker and he really makes good food, good meat on there, and he's like, I'll just smoke briskets. And I'm just like, no, listen, on the day of the wedding, you cannot be smoking briskets. You're the father of the bride, right? I need you to be available and dressed. So you cannot smoke briskets. So we got the meat catered, but then everything else we made. So then we made cheese potatoes. Both my daughters wanted cheese potatoes at their wedding. And those you can make 2 to 3 days ahead of time and keep them in the cooler. And it's very, very simple. Now share my recipe with you if you want, because it says this makes one roaster full. And if you're Mennonite or Amish at all, you know that one roaster feeds 80 to 100 people. That's like
Oh, I
part of
love
your,
that. I
yes, right?
love it. Yes, yeah. I'm giggling because we have like 2 smokers, and that is definitely my husband, but I'm also like, yes, that stress level, like, honey, you can make an awesome smoke, like, I it's not a question of the quality of your smoked meat because it's great, but it's not something you can really do ahead of time, and yeah, that stress on that day, and I also love knowing exactly 80 people to a roaster. Like, that is so helpful to know. That is approximately how many people that will feed for
Yes,
the
if
planning
you're
out part. Yeah.
and then green beans, we also did so canned green beans. So we just, you heat them in the roaster. And then so in the Amish and Mennonite communities, weddings work like this. So the bride and her family prepare everything ahead of time, but then on the day of the wedding, they have specific people that are invited just to take care and serve the food.
Okay.
So for my daughter's weddings, those were some of my friends, right? It would like my friends that didn't really know the girls, but I know who to invite to take care of the food. So if you need me to come and make sure everything's ready and served, I can do that for you. So then at the venue, instead of having caterers, they're guests. They get everything prepared. I of course met with them, but they have skills. They're Mennonite. They have all the same skills I have. And so they turn the roasters on and they go to the church and they, watch the ceremony. And then they're the first ones to leave. And they go and they just make sure everything is ready to serve.
That's awesome. So, do you just keep those like that amount of roasters on hand as part of your kitchen, or
I
like is
have
that from
one.
the venue, or does everybody just kind of share?
Yeah, they'll share. Okay, so here's another thing. Personally, for our daughter's wedding, we borrowed the roasters from our church because our church has a kitchen, right?
Okay.
But here's a very interesting thing, and I think all communities should do this, but in the Amish and Mennonite communities, they have a trailer, like an enclosed trailer, and
Uh-huh.
guess what's inside that trailer? All the things that you could need to have a wedding.
Oh, how interesting. And it's just like a community.
It's a community wagon. Well, you rent it. Somebody owns it. I
Okay.
I
Okay.
think you pay, and it's full of folding chairs and tables and roasters and everything that you could need to have a wedding.
That is genius. Well, it's kind of funny. So we purchased almost 3 years ago now 40 acres just a half mile down the road from us, and it's a farm stay. So the farmhouse is like an Airbnb, like a short-term
Okay.
vacation rental. And we really did it because I wanted the 40 acres to increase our beef herd, our cattle herd. And so I'm like, how can I make this mortgage pay for itself essentially, or just meet the mortgage payment,
Yeah.
and get this pasture? And so we renovated the house, turned it into Airbnb, and then there was some extra barns on the property and a shop. And so I actually had people who started renting the Airbnb and asking, can we do a wedding there? And I'm like, yeah. And so I kind of started gathering things like, oh, here's tables and chairs, and we use them for workshops and different things like that on the property already. I don't have roasters though. So I'm like, ooh, maybe I just need to add that to that.
Hmm.
Obviously for that, but then for other
Roasters. Yeah,
brides,
and
yeah,
like big bowls, big,
big
stainless steel
serving.
mixing
Yeah.
bowls or serving bowls. Yeah. Um, they also have one. They also have a butchering wagon.
Ooh,
I
fun.
know, I
Do
know. So,
tell.
my husband works full time, right? So all of our animals that we raise, they go to a Mennonite butcher shop and we get them back in packages, right? And I really would love for our children to have the skills of butchering a large animal. We do chickens, and
Same.
we do the deer. But I'd really like for them to have the skill. Well, Elvin grew up butchering their own beef. And so he's very cautious that he knows how much work it is, right? So he's always told me, you need thousands of dollars worth of equipment that you would use once or twice a year. It doesn't make sense. And he said, then I would have to take off of work to help. And it just doesn't make financial sense for us to do it. So when I told him, did you know you can rent a wagon that has all the things that you need to butcher a large animal? And he's like losing the argument slowly but surely. He's losing that argument.